Welcome back. Chapter 2. Wellsworth is a fabulous school, darling. You're going to love it, her mum said. It was after midnight and they were driving back home. The last thing Emmy wanted to do was talk. She pressed her head against the car window and pretended to sleep. Her mum didn't take the hint. England is amazing. I spent a few years there with my cousin Lucy, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. Emmy's eyes flew open. England. Her mother had gone to England. That was where she had met she pursed her lips. The letter with his name had arrived only a few days before. She was way too much of a coincidence to have this happening and England and, well, she glanced at her mother. Could she ask about him without raising suspicion? All right, Emmy said casually. You met Dad in England, didn't you? Her mum cleared her throat. She always did that when Emmy brought up her father. Yes, I did. So far, so good. You haven't heard anything about him lately, have you? Of course not. He's been gone 9 years. Why would anyone want to hear from him right now? Images flickered in Emmy's mind like an old home movie. A pair of strong hands lifting her high in the air. A scratchy beard nuzzling her face. The smell of peppermint chewing gum. It had been 9 years, ever since her 3rd birthday, when her cake sat uneaten in the fridge. Nobody felt like celebrating. Does he still have family in England? Her mum stared at the road. Her face, which had been so full of energy and excitement while she was talking about the school, now looked like it had been carved in stone. Your father didn't really have any family. Or maybe friends? Emmy persisted. Anyone who knew him? Well, knew him well? Why are you asking all these questions about your father? Emmy looked at her hands. She didn't want her mum to get suspicious. I was only curious. Her mum sighed. As far as I know, he never had any contact with anyone from England after we moved here. I think it's best not to focus in on him. It's just you, me, and that's not so bad, is it? Emmy looked out the window. Right. She wasn't sure if she meant it or not, but it seemed like the best way to end the conversation. She needed time to think and to plan. It wasn't hard to convince her mother she needed to go to bed as soon as they got home. The hard part was making sure that her mum didn't figure out she wasn't planning on sleeping. Emmy quietly pulled her nightstand drawer open and moved all the knickknacks aside. Way at the back, exactly where she'd left it, was the letter. She looked at it so many times in the last 3 days. She had it memorized, but she took it out and reread it again and again and again. Dear Emmeline, changes are coming. There's more to your father than you realize. If you found any of his relics, keep them safe. Sincerely, a friend. Emmy didn't know what to make of it. Changes are coming. Could this person have known Emmy's mum was sending her to England? How could that be possible when Emmy hadn't even known herself? She looked at the letter again and again. Her father? His relics? But she didn't have anything that belonged to her father. Her mother had gotten rid of everything he owned when he disappeared. Yet, this, friend seemed to think Emmy might have some kind of relics that belonged to him. She lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. This house had been in her mum's family for generations. She'd never sell it. If her dad wanted to hide something valuable, it would be the perfect place. Emmy crept to her door and eased it open. The light in her mum's bedroom was out. She tiptoed up the little staircase that wound its way around the chimney and unlatched the narrow door that led to the attic. She shuddered in the cold and flicked on the light. There was stuff everywhere. A spinning wheel that must have belonged to a long-lost ancestor. A telephone with a long curly cord that plugged into the wall. Even an old desktop computer her mum must have forgotten to get rid of. Any of it could have been considered a relic. So, which one belonged to her dad? She opened the nearest box. It was just old cables. The next 3 boxes she looked in had receipts and documents that looked like they were her mum's for taxes. The 5th box was filed with more documents, and Emmy was about to close it when a page at the bottom caught her eye. Did that say marriage? She pulled the paper out. At the top, in huge letters, it read, Marriage Certificate. Emmy swallowed hard and read the names. Pamela Willick, Thomas Allen. Emmy frowned. That couldn't be right. Wasn't her dad's name Willick? The certificate made it look like her dad had taken her mum's last name. She shrugged. He must have been really progressive if that's the case. Emmy looked around the room. There had to be more things about her dad up here, things her mum hadn't gotten rid of. She searched every box, but nothing else had her dad's name. A glimmer of daylight started shining through the tiny attic window. Her mum would be waking up any minute. She was running out of time. She rubbed the goosebumps on her arms and tried to remember what the letter had said. If you found any of his relics, keep them safe. Relics. Documents weren't really relics. And if they were sitting out in the open, that wouldn't be very safe. Maybe there was a hiding spot. She stepped around the ice-cold chimney and rubbed her hands along the walls. Nothing seemed like the latch to a hidden door. She could tap on the floorboards to see if one might be loose, but that would probably wake up her mom. Besides, it was a 200-year-old farmhouse. All the floorboards were creaky and making noise in there. Emmy sighed. It'd been nearly impossible to search for a hiding spot without making a big racket. She put her hand on the great stone chimney and reached for the door, then stopped. Why wasn't this part of the chimney as cold as the rest of it? The texture felt different too, like all the grit had been rubbed off the stone. Emmy looked closer. It had some kind of coating on it, like a hard plastic that was made to look like a rock. She reached her fingers around it. There was a groove, one that her fingers fit inside. She yanked it, and the fake stone flew into her hands, revealing a giant hole behind it. There was a metal box inside. Emmy's heart started beating harder and harder. This was definitely a relic. She pulled out the box and felt a jolt in her stomach. Oh, it was beautiful. There were carvings all around the outside, roses and thorns and intricate roses. Slowly and carefully, she opened the lid. There was a letter inside. Here goes. My dear Pamela, I know you must be upset with me, but if you find these, please don't get rid of them. They're very important. My dearest Emmeline, if you find these, keep them safe, and I wouldn't tell your mother if I were you. Love, Tom/Dad. The letter started shaking in Emmy's hand. My dearest Emmeline, love, Dad. Her father had written this letter, and he'd written it to her? She put the letter aside and gasped. 12 medallions were fitted into slots, and each one was a different shape. Some were round, some were teardrops, and each of them were so well carved, like masterpieces. Every groove, every curve, every edge looked like it was exactly where it was meant to be, creating a set where no two medallions were alike. She picked one up and pressed it into her palm of her hand. Were these really her father's? She had never owned anything that belonged to her dad. She had never even seen anything that belonged to him. She sat on the frigid wood floor and put the box on her lap. What should she do with it? The letter had said she should keep him safe, all the relics safe. Did that mean she should hide them in her room? Or should she take them with her to England? She hadn't even known if she wanted to go to England at all. She leaned her head against the wall and sighed. She could refuse to go, you know. She could march down to breakfast and tell her mom she wasn't going anywhere, and that was that. But there was a part of her, this tiny voice, that said, why not? What would she be leaving behind? Heating up frozen lasagna while she waited for her mom to get home late at night? Watching reruns alone on Saturday night? England. Her dad's home. Could she find a home there too? Emmy tapped her fingers on the box. Whoever sent her that letter must have known she was supposed to go to England, and that these medallions were hidden in this house. They must have known about her dad, and if going to England meant the chance to learn more about her father, she was going to take that chance. She bit her lip. Now, she just had to figure out how to keep her mum from finding out about the letter and the medallions before she got to the plane. A week later, she was standing in Heathrow Airport's arrivals hall, trying to navigate a luggage cart through swarms of stressed-out travelers. Somebody from the school was supposed to pick her up, but she had no clue how to recognize the person. Maybe they'd have a sign with Emmy's name on it, like in the movies. "Excuse me, might you be Emmeline Willick?" Emmy whirled around. A man with a shaved head and stubbled chin was staring at her. I'm Emmy." The man held out his hand. "I'm Jonas Tresham, and I'm here to take you to Wellsworth." Emmy bit her lip. She pictured someone prim and proper and wearing a fancy suit. This guy was wearing a black hoodie and looked like he hadn't shaved in a week. "You're from Wellsworth?" He pointed to a patch on his hoodie. "That's what it says on my check and as well on my jacket." Emmy squinted at the patch. It said Wellsworth. She took his outstretched hand and shook it. "Would you like to wait out front while I bring the car around?" he asked. "No, I'll just walk." After 8 hours of travel, she was desperate to stretch her legs. It didn't take long to find the Wellsworth car. It looked like something the royal family would ride in. Sleek, black, and huge. Jonas didn't drive very carefully. He drove so fast, he drove crazy fast. And he wasn't the only one. Just getting onto the freeway felt like a NASCAR race, but with everyone on the wrong side of the road. After what seemed like forever on the freeway, the car veered into an exit lane and started to slow down. Soon they were on a new road, a slower road, and Emmy could finally look out the window without getting dizzy. Thick hedges lined the narrow street and almost brushed the side of the car. They turned onto a driveway and went under a heavy stone archway with the word Wellsworth carved into the top. Emmy pressed her nose to the window, but there were so many trees that she couldn't catch a glimpse of the school. Finally, they reached the end of the driveway. She clutched her backpack tightly, clambered out the car, and looked up, way up. She'd been to a lot of private schools before, but none of them looked like this. It had tall spires and massive arched windows like the cathedrals in New York City. A maze of walls sprung out in every direction, as if people just added more rooms when they needed space. A woman with wild black hair walked down the front stairs, leaning on a cane with every step. "Emmeline? Emmeline Willick?" "Yes," Emmy said. "Welcome to Wellsworth. I'm Madame Boyd. I'll be your house mistress. That means I'm here to support you, offer guidance, and make sure you don't flunk out." Emmy tried to swallow, but her mouth felt like sandpaper. Was flunking out a likely possibility? "Let's get you to the house." Jonas heaved her luggage out of the trunk, and the three of them walked down a path that snaked around the side of the sprawling building. As soon as they rounded the corner, the wind just about knocked Emmy off her feet. It bit at her cheeks like an icy whip, and as if she'd just walked into a frozen wind tunnel. "I've been having a look at your school records," Madame Boyd said. "You haven't got any Latin?" No. "And no Greek?" "No." Madame Boyd shook her head. "No classical studies, no literature, and who knows what they've been teaching you in US history? Well, no use flapping about. We'll just keep the head and deal with it in the morn's morn." It was like Madame Boyd spoke a different version of English, one with unrecognizable words with extra R's and no G's. Maybe she was from Ireland or Scotland. "You'll have to start off in a first-year Latin class, and I'll be putting you in the Latin Society to help you catch up," Madame Boyd said. "What's the Latin Society?" "A group committed to learning and excelling in Latin studies. They read and discuss Latin literature and offer assistance to students who need extra guidance." A Latin reading club? That had to be the most boring thing she'd ever heard of. "Are there any other clubs I could join? Like soccer, maybe?" You'll find information on all our games and societies, including football, in your school handbook. Emmy felt a jolt in her chest. So, they did have a soccer team. At least there was one thing to look forward to. Madam Boyd glanced at her. Latin society can be a bit boisterous, I suppose. Some of their members have a habit of making poor choices. Nevertheless, they boast some of the highest Latin exam scores in the country, and given how behind you are, I think it will be a real benefit to you. Just make sure you stay out of trouble. Emmy nodded, even though she couldn't imagine what kind of trouble she would find at a scuffy old Latin club. They walked across the blowing grounds until they took a sharp turn into a wall of trees. Wherever they were going, it was well concealed. Madame Boyd took another sharp turn and stopped so abruptly, Emmy almost ran into her. There in a clearing stood two stone towers that looked like they were hooked onto a large round room that sat between them. These are the Edmund and Audrey houses, Madame Boyd said. You'll be on the third floor in Audrey. That's the girls' house. She looked at Jonas. Would you mind bringing Miss Willick's things to her room? I have something to discuss with her before she goes in. Jonas nodded and brought Emmy's suitcases inside. Madame Boyd looked squarely at Emmy. Miss Willick, I must be frank with you. I have some concerns about you being admitted to Wellsworth, you know. Emmy looked down at her hands. Not because you aren't a good student, Madame Boyd went on, but because of how much pressure this will be put on you. You haven't grown up in our school system, and you missed all of the first and second year, and you've missed the start of third. Even though there'll be some overlap with your American schooling, you are still incredibly behind. I'm telling you this to discourage you, but to give you not to discourage you rather, but to give you a realistic expectation of the work you have ahead. I explained all of this to your mother, of course, but she insisted you could handle it. However, if Wellsworth is too much for you, we can make other arrangements. Do you understand? Emmy nodded and tucked her hair behind her ear. School had never been too much for her before, but she'd never been to one like this. Maybe Wellsworth wasn't such a good idea. There's a school handbook in your room, Madame Boyd said. You'll find a map in there along with your timetable. Unfortunately, I have meetings, so I can't come in with you, but your roommate will help you get settled. Madame Boyd shook Emmy's hand. I won't wish you good luck, because with hard work and self-discipline, you won't need it. Emmy nodded weakly, but wished she did have a good luck charm. It sounded like she was going to need it. Madame Boyd disappeared into the trees, and Jonas came out of the house. Everything all right? Emmy shrugged. The stitches in her forehead still ached. She'd been traveling forever, and her housemistress didn't think she could hack it. If you don't mind my saying, you do look a bit peaky, young miss. Should I fetch someone to come and... I'm fine. I'm fine, Emmy said. She didn't know what peaky meant, but it couldn't be good. Jonas scratched his stubby chin. I know Wellsworth can be a bit daunting at first. I was a student here myself. Even though I graduated almost 20 years ago, I still remember what overwhelming feeling it is. It makes a lot of people wonder whether this is really the place for them. Emmy's eyes filled with tears. She'd only just gotten there, and she was already so far behind she might never catch up. Maybe she should just get back on the plane and not look back. No one's going to make you stay, Jonas said. Only you can decide if it is worth it. Emmy hiked her bag a little higher on her shoulder. She could feel the outline of the box inside, like a talisman that held part of her father, part of herself, inside it. It felt heavy against her back, like it was trying to get her attention. I'm here, it was saying. I'm here. Don't forget me. Well, you'd best be getting inside, Jonas said. If you need any help, I'll be around. Thanks, Emmy said, and Jonas disappeared into the trees. Emmy turned and stared at the thick wooden door. It was now or never. She clutched her bag tightly, pushed down on the iron handle, and heaved open the door.